So now I'm going to do the video on this one where I've already removed the spindle from the other side, so I'll be able to show you from the other side here what we have going on. Your first step is going to be to remove these retainer clips. Now you may have a clip that looks like this, or you may have a C clip that's just around the outer edge. At any rate, spraying this with some PB Blaster is a good idea a few minutes before you get started. That'll help loosen up some corrosion and also help with removing the joint itself in the next step. So whether or not you've applied PB Blaster or not, your next step is going to be to remove this clip. Again, you may have a C clip that has 2 dots that you would use snap ring pliers for, or you may have a clip that looks like this, where you're going to use pliers to squeeze it together and then pull it out. I already know this isn't going to work. This is seized in there pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a flathead screwdriver and a hammer, and I'm going to knock it loose on each side. It may come off in pieces like that, the whole thing might fly out, or it'll just loosen up and then I would use the pliers to remove it. In this case, mine's coming out in pieces, which is fine. Your new joint's going to include new clips. So there we have that side out. We'll flip it over and do the other side. So now once we have our retainer clips out, we can now apply our universal joint press or ball joint press, whichever you want to call it. A ball joint starter service kit will include a U-joint press, which is the ideal way to do this. This is the one I use. I've used this for many U-joints and ball joints and everything. I love this kit and it's very durable. I'll put a link in the video description on where to get this. So now in this ball joint kit is going to be a large C-clamp looking piece. This is what we're going to use for our U-joints. This is also referred to as a U-joint press / ball joint press. We're going to line up this outer lip on the underside with the axle so that this joint will fall down into this recessed area, and then this top section will get centered on that part of the joint. Now this whole process can be done with the joint in the vehicle. I took it out for ease of recording, plus I need my drive shaft out anyway because I'm also doing a video on replacing my center support bearing. Okay, so I did go ahead and spray some PB Blaster penetrating oil on here and let it sit for a few minutes just because I know my previous U-joints were stuck pretty hard. So now after that, all we're going to do is take a socket, and if you have an impact gun you can use that, or you can use a regular wrench. Impact gun definitely is a lot easier, and I'm just going to tighten down on that with the impact gun. And we are going to press the joint as far down as we can. Now what I'm feeling for under here, if you see me putting my finger under here, is just making sure that my joint is still squared up with the tool. I don't want to be pushing against the tool and possibly mess up my yoke here. Okay, so once I have that as far down as it'll go, I can go ahead and back this off. So now what I have to do is get the lower bearing cup out. I'll probably put vice grips on it and work it out here. Ideally, you have better luck than me and yours come right out. There we go, I just had to beat it loose a little bit and now it'll pop right off. So now if you can squeeze this out around there, if you have enough play area to work this out around, maybe put a small pry bar in here and pop it out that last little bit there, that's good. If you can't squeeze it out, what you would normally do is line it back up and press the joint back down the other way now, getting the other bearing cup out this end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to demonstrate that. Make sure you line this up with the spindle perfectly. You don't want to go on the spindle crooked and mess this lip up and end up having to get a new spindle. Again, feeling under there to make sure I have enough clearance. And then again, my bearing cup didn't come completely out, so I'll go ahead and get that out the other way. And then you just remove your U-joint. and the bearing cup. So now before we install our new U-joint, a couple things we want to do. Get yourself a small pick and clean this recessed area in here where that retainer clip sits. Make sure it's all free and clear of dirt, grime, any kind of nicks, anything like that. Another thing is, another really good way to do this, put a little wire wheel brush on a Dremel and clean that out with a little wire wheel brush. That works excellent. After we have our recessed areas top and bottom cleaned out, next thing we want to do is feel around that whole area where that bearing cup sits. Make sure we don't have any nicks or chips or anything that are going to make that new bearing cup hang up. If you do, you could possibly mess up the new bearing cup and have to get another new U-joint, or we're going to have to take it back apart and do it again. So make sure that we have that all free and clear and it's all smooth. And I can feel one little nick here I'm going to have to file down. I'll show you that. So right here we can see a little nick. I'm going to have to take my Dremel and file that down smooth. So again, here's my little nick I need to smooth out. So we don't want to take off any more than we have to, and that's perfect. Got that nice and smooth. So installing our new U-joints, first thing we're going to do is take all the grease cups off so none of them fall off, and then we have bearings bouncing all over the place that we're digging on the dirty garage floor for. So get these all off and out of the way. And you'll see there's a little bit of grease down in there. If you want to add a little bit more grease to hold those bearings in place, that will not be a bad thing. Don't like overload it, but you can put a little bit more in there if you like. So then we're going to feed the joint into this area. And then we're going to take the one bearing cup and get it in by hand as far as we can, and then we're going to set the U-joint down inside the bearing cup, and we're going to hold it in there while we use the press to press this first bearing cup up inside there. Now, because of gravity, this process is probably going to be done better going horizontal than vertical, so this doesn't drop out on me. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this around here a minute. Now, this particular part of the process may be better done with a hand wrench and socket, or hand ratchet I should say, rather than the impact, just to keep the vibration down. And also we don't want to run it in there too fast because we don't want this to go in too far right off the bat. All I want to do is run this bearing cup in just on the other side of that recessed area where the retaining ring is going to go. And the reason we have this joint loosely in there is also to hold these bearings in place. That's why I have the U-joint pulled all the way into the bearing cup as I'm pressing it in. And I have that just about where it needs to be. And again, make sure you hold the joint into the cup so that the bearings don't fall out on you or move around. Now I'm going to take the next bearing cup and stick that in there. And now I want to move the joint into this bearing cup. Try and keep it a little bit in both, but I mainly want to focus on this one to keep these bearings in place as I'm attaching this side or pressing this side in. And that felt real good. I shouldn't have to muscle this in there. This should slide nice and easy into the other cup if everything's lined up properly. And so now they're not going to fall out now, so we can go ahead and turn the drive shaft up this way so you can see a little better. So again, our new U-joint came with new retaining rings along with the grease fitting we'll need. I'm just going to press it right down in, and I heard that click all the way around, and I can see from up above here that it's in on these two ears, which is what we want. We want it in all the way around. So that side's done. If it doesn't go in right away, you may have to just press that bearing cup in a pinch further. And I can see this side's going to need in a bit farther. Now that only went in on that side, so I'm going to work this around a little bit because it looks like something might be keeping this side from going in. So it's going to give it a light tap with a flathead screwdriver to rotate that ring around. So now once you have both of your clips in, you want to rotate the joint a few times to make sure it's moving freely. It shouldn't be hung up at all. It may be just a little bit rough when you first rotate it because we just pressed this one all the way in, then this one, so they may be pinched in there. So give that a few wiggles and then we'll be good. Now I should also mention, with your new pack of retaining rings and all, now that we have a greasable fitting, one of those rings is going to look different, and that is going to be the one that has the grease fitting. So make sure you save this clip for the bearing cup that has the grease fitting. You'll see if you use this one, you're not going to be able to get that grease fitting in there. It would be in the way. So they have that slightly different designed ring for that side. So here we are on the last bearing cup that had the greasable fitting. So this clip will go in a little bit different. You're not going to be able to get pliers on there. So you're going to have to set it in there and then work it on with a screwdriver. So a couple different ways you can attempt that. You saw what I did there. I put a flathead screwdriver in and pulled it up and then slid it down the screwdriver. Whichever way you find best to do that, as long as you can get it in there. And again, make sure that your clips are seated all the way around. This isn't really seated real well right there, so I'm going to work this around. Sometimes you get spots on here that need cleaned up, and I should have maybe done a little better job cleaning it up with a Dremel. There we go. There's a nice spot where it's seated. Once we're done that, we can finally install our grease fitting in the center, and you'll see it's just a flathead screwdriver. Now I've had other fittings where they were actually small, like 6mm sockets, things like that. So whichever one your grease fitting is, go ahead and insert your grease fitting. Then we're going to move the joint both ways, get this all freed up, because again, like I said, sometimes after you install it, it sticks a little bit until the U-joint itself gets settled into all 4 cups. So I'm going to get this out of the vise and move this around a few times. So that's all there is to removing and installing a new universal joint. Again, I'll put links in the description down below on where to get the tools. There is a budget option for the ball joint press that I used. It's about $55. The exact model I used is OTC, which is more of a commercial quality. So that one's up to about $170 as of the making of this video. But the $55 one has excellent reviews. I think that'll suit you just fine. So again, I'll put links in the description to both. So if you're on more of a budget, you can get that cheaper option. But again, that's all there is to this. I really hope this video helped you out. If it did, please hit it with a like, subscribe to the channel. Always more stuff coming. And I'm going to go ahead and give this can be a 3 to 4 beer job if you've got really stuck U-joints. But otherwise, 2 beers, you've got 2 or 3 of these things replaced. Again, thanks for watching.